Welcome to Technically Speaking, conversations for design managers delivering real stories and ready-to-use tactics to help you build confidence and credibility. I sit down with top voices in design, tech, and business to open the black box of leadership. I'm your host, Harrison Wheeler. With 20 years in design and a decade leading teams from scrappy startups to global giants, it's time to get technical. Thanks for tapping in and listening to Technically Speaking. In this limited series podcast, we'll explore the untold stories of AI product development, the go-to-market strategies that actually work, and the personal projects that evolved into powerful tools and the unique challenges of designing for AI-driven experiences. Let's get in a building for the future. Today, we're getting technical with Jay Demetillo, designer at Canva, about the challenges, triumphs, and unexpected terms of building in the AI space. He's no stranger to the pod, and in true form, he's joining us from yet another corner of the world. He's worked across some of the most recognizable names in tech: Twitter, Pinterest, Yahoo, Duarte, Grab, and now Canva. His design journey has taken him from the Bay Area to New York, Singapore, and now Sydney, where he's helping shape the future of creative tools at Canva. Welcome to the show. Jay, how are you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Look, I'm really excited to have you on. Obviously, a lot of really exciting things that have happened. Jay's been operating in silence for quite some time, so I'm sure you're feeling a bit relieved to be able to show to the world what you've been working on.
Yo, seriously, we've been working on this for past few years, so I'm like relieved I can finally talk about it. Because anytime someone asks, it's like, "Oh, you must be working on something AI related." It's like, yeah, maybe, but sure, whatever.
Yeah. I'm curious. When you were brought sort of like this initiative, um, maybe like what was the headspace that you were in? You were working at Grab before, obviously very segmented kind of market, um, immature sort of market, at least in the rideshare space. So moving to Australia, getting on such a big charter, maybe kind of tell me a little bit about, especially in a world where maybe it wasn't clear what like the impact of AI would have at the time on sort of the industry.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think for me, I was just like designing for software is so different from obviously, completely different from like mobile design for ride sharing, right? So for me to jump into like software space, native desktop apps, you have to think about like different states someone is using the application with. So like a few things that I took out from like working on a native desktop app. It's like, where's the user at? What are they selected? Are they typing? Are they editing? Are they not editing? Can you like select the state? What does that look like getting into editing state? So all these like little things that you disregard had to come into play. So my headspace, I was it was pretty much a learning curve for me in general, and it was pretty difficult. But I think overall, jumping into a space where AI hadn't hit yet was very interesting too, because we read about it back then, maybe like 2, 3 years ago, and then everyone started jumping into AI, and then all the possibilities like were like, oh, we can do this now. And over the course of the year, we started using AI here and there just to prototype, maybe just screens. And then obviously you could do somewhat interactive prototypes. But I can talk about that later of how interactive they should be and could be. But it didn't really solve the problems that I actually needed to solve at the point in time.
Interesting. So let me maybe rephrase that. You're saying AI hadn't gotten to the point to be able to solve the problems at the time?
I think for me, yeah,
Interesting. Like what types of problems, I guess?
great question. I think for interactions such as like drag and dropping into like a spreadsheet is just an example, right? No one really thinks about like the interactions in terms of like what that looks like of dragging a item into a spreadsheet and then actually having it target which cell you want to drop it into. And in regular spreadsheets, you can just drop it on top of the spreadsheet, right? And then you have to like do some really hassling interaction just to put it in a cell. like I had to figure out without AI's help of how what that looked like with like those super detailed interactions. And I think that's really hard to do with like AI in general, right? Because it only does give you the visual idea and the very simple interactions, not very in-depth interactions like that. So you still need like applications like ProtoPie or even like Framer. Some people still code in Framer and prototype in that way to like get those funky interactions, just to showcase to engineers what it should look like.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. So maybe kind of walk me through that a bit. Because I'd imagine, drag and drop as a concept, nothing new. But I think like kind of what you're speaking to is just sort of the more, how would I say this, robust nature of drag and drop on
Yeah,
a sheet or a table, because you could have implications on all the data around it potentially, right?
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Um, so, one of the things we were talking about before the show was you didn't necessarily have all the time to learn like these AI prototyping tools. And so you actually maybe took some of these things in your own hand outside of work and sort of brought that back in. Maybe tell us about that experience.
Yeah, I think for me in general, obviously I still go through the typical process of like, hey, let's look at through Figma, and let's build it. But obviously, even Figma has like some wacky prototypes where you can't really like do the typing interaction, right? Or even like like very complicated interactions, like I was talking about drag and drop. So for me, I would just build it in ProtoPie, um, and it would just be so easy because I know ProtoPie front to back. I know what the capabilities are. It can even do like voice and keyboard interactions as well. You can actually type into it, which is really nice. So when I was working on like even magic formulas, and we can talk about it a little bit later, it's like the fact that you can type into a magic formula and showcase like, oh, this is what it'll look like to engineers, this is what it'll look like to stakeholders, and this is how it'll impact the spreadsheet, and all the little micro interactions that go with magic formulas. Like that made such a difference when you're just showcasing these in these decks and these presentations to stakeholders, and they see the what's the word? They see the fidelity of the interactions, and they can see like, oh, okay, this is what it looked like in reality, in general, and this is what's buildable, and it helps really speed up the conversation. Like, oh, we can get this within this scope, and this maybe is like for the future. So I think that's really important, especially if you're a designer building within a large ecosystem to really communicate and scope things down, especially for the MVP in general.
Yeah. Did you see sort of like a change in perception in terms of like your role when you were able to sort of do those types of things?
I think it was more like craftsmanship respect, right? Everybody was like, "Oh wow, this guy has some craftsmanship towards like how he interacts and shows for all these interactions." I think, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be like, "Oh, it's all me." Like, yeah, I think it's teamwork, right? Like, there's some really good interactive designers at Canva that I think people tend to like not to talk about, but like some amazing Canva designers that like still use Figma and they do some crazy stuff with Figma. So, respect to the other designers, but like I think craftsmanship became a part of like for me it became a big thing, but also like it's important when I look at like LinkedIn, right? And everyone talks about, having taste. It really comes down to craftsmanship as well. Like having that taste and craftsmanship is really important to stand out. And like also with like when you look at other competitors too, right? To stand out with design and these interactions, that's how you do it with craftsmanship and taste, with your interactions, how it looks, how it feels. There's all these little things that we can talk about as we keep talking the pod.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I just wrote something on like taste, and I think uh, one of the things to me that speaks out about that is just showing up and like having kind of the receipts of, hey, yeah, like maybe this person does know what they're doing and we should pay a little bit more attention to them than just sort of keeping it as a nebulous kind of concept. Um, you know, Kind of maybe speak to, we're going to kind of wrap back in sort of you coming on the team. So, um, you're kind of influencing, maybe getting people to understand what's possible. Uh, What does your collaboration model look like? I think you had like a little thank you note, and you were kind of thanking people from literally halfway across the world. So, uh, what does that sort of look like? And even like just kind of going back, like, do you feel that because of the nature of you know collaborating with people such in a large amount of time zones, those prototypes maybe kind of help get sort of like that response quicker?
I think it's so important to collaborate with people. I love my designers in general. And like shout out to Caro, who's the other designer on Sheets, and my Dataviz partners as well in London, Alex, Ellen, and Isabel, who are like also amazing. So we had to really collaborate with them really tightly, especially in London. So um, like having these critiques across our team in Australia, also have like meetings cross time with like the London folks. It was really late for us, but we had to have these conversations in general. That's really important to settle like discussions, any disagreements on interactions, just like aligning on stuff. That's so important, especially when you have to consider like an ecosystem like Canva or any like large ecosystem. You have to consider like talking to all these different designers that have actually a say or stake in your design. There's a totally different AI team as well, and considering those interactions, those entry points as well into their applications for us from Sheets, that's really important to understand as well. And obviously, like product side as well. So shout out to James, who's also our product person as well, and working with these other product people across multiple teams was very tricky, especially when it's like a new thing that's coming out of nowhere. We had to align with a lot of people, lots of workshops as well, and just a lot of visioning as well. That's really important to just, sell the value prop in general and get people on board.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, One of the things I appreciate about the Sheets work is when I think about any sort of data tabling tool, um, it's essentially looked the same for the past, what, 30, probably nearly 40 years. And, the in terms of the capabilities, oftentimes you have to search and get a ton of different plugins just to get it to do what you want to do. And I think even in today's world, when we think about small, medium businesses, even creators that might be listening to the show, using a bunch of different tools. And so you need those integrations. Maybe kind of take me through sort of like that process to break from, this
Yeah,
very established way of bringing these types of tools to the market.
great question. So yes, it's like a legacy product in general, right? But there are a lot of user problems that go with it. It's- A lot of it's too complex to use. The toolbars are crazy, right? Like that Microsoft Ribbon's like out of control. It's hard to make them look nice. Hard to get started on a blank spreadsheet. Hard to use on mobile. Hard to collaborate with. Hard to do some project management with to like get it looking nice, and sit separate from separate tools in the workflow. And but for us to like stand out, we want to make it easy to use, beautiful visual spreadsheets, advanced dynamic charts, working with the Dataviz team, direct integration to the workflow, having like easy access with third-party apps as app in general. Multiple templates are available on spreadsheet, which is awesome. It's easy to start. It's okay on mobile. I think one of the things that we heard from users is like, hey, my fingers are too thick for like the small spreadsheet cells on mobile from other competitors. Like we made the cells a little bit larger for those users in general, and I think we got some good feedback on that. But yeah, we tried to make it easy to collaborate on it, and I think those things are important to position ourselves in general to make it a very nice spreadsheet product in general. And also the value prop from Canva as well, a design team in general is making complex things simple. So just trying to make sheets, Canva sheets in general, this very simple for the user to easily do things, to easily do actions in one tap is very important. So how do we scale down all these like weird interactions that other competitors haven't like thought about, or maybe they can't do because their garden's already too big that they can't make those changes, right? Where we have the opportunity to actually reinvent and make it way simpler. And I think that's where the opportunity came through. And that's how we just simplified it down, just talking to a bunch of users and just, hearing the pain points in their workflow and process was how we applied all these principles of just making things simpler and into like one, two tap actions.
Yeah, yeah. I think what is fascinating to me is just, outside of, building another like, AI LLM like tool set, it's great to see another disruptor in a space that's been around for so long. Because I feel recently there's just been so many acquisitions.
So many.
Um, and so like to know that there's a product where people see so much delight in expanding into that and really getting into solving for those needs is really refreshing. Um, I'm laughing in my head. I'm like, who is the user archetype that is using Sheets on their phone?
You'd be surprised, dude. You'd be surprised.
Uh, so look, just kind of segueing again. In big tech, there's a lot of pressure to slap AI on everything, and that's just led to a wave of half-baked experiences. So, how did your team approach integrating AI? I know you mentioned that, streamlining some workflow, but maybe what was like the mindset around just building around the value prop here?
Yeah, I think again, working with the AI team was very important because the AI team also had some principles and a lot of interaction guidelines that we had to follow and make sure that we're like aligned with, right? So applying those into our workshop, especially when you're coming together in a team, I think it's weird that we work in silos in large companies. Like I actually brought in the AI designer to help us work with these AI flows and include like, his principles, the entry points of like how to make these simple. Cause like sometimes there's too many entry points to like AI and it's like that makes it redundant, right? How do we make it special? How do we make sure that people can find it easily? Like what's the content also? How people can understand this is AI. It's a magical experience. And with Canva, right? Obviously we call it like magic formulas, magic insights. How do we make it feel like it's easy and it's a delightful experience? So you can see like the little things I'm talking about is like delightful, easy to use, come into like how AI can assist in the workflow in general for especially Canva Sheets, but also like Canva's AI entry points into their features are trying to just simplify everything that is pretty much difficult to do.
So it seems like it's almost like the areas that cause a lot of pain is where you really apply that concept of magic. Because I always
Yeah,
think when I go to formulas I'm like, oh man, I feel like I need to break out, Excel for Dummies. Uh,
yeah. Where's Clippy at?
where's Clippy when you need them? Uh, so maybe kind of talk to that. So what is it? What was like that process like of like identifying these pain points, and how did maybe working with AI change maybe like your mindset and how you approach that problem space?
It's a good question. I think when you consider also like Magic Write is also a big one from Canva as well, where it's easy to generate content. And then you give spreadsheets an easy way to let users generate content not only inside a spreadsheet, but the fact that they can just make formulas easier is a big deal. Because, like you said, right, a lot of our users don't know the formulas in general. They're just like still like, oh, I don't know what the formula is to look up. Maybe I don't know the date of a product when it's launched in a gigantic data set. So how do we make that simple for someone to use like a VLOOKUP like formula in general, and how do you make that easy for the person to just write it and read it? And that was just like partnering with the AI team, the LM engineers in general, just like how do we do this? I'm not going to say it was easy or difficult, but it's just a matter of like, okay, thinking about all the different types of flows of how someone's potentially going to write an answer, get that answer, and where they're going to use it as well. I think even Magic Insights was also very interesting of like, how do you read a large data set and get like the top three summaries of a feature? Also even get the formula that's potentially being used, or you can use it within the data set that'd be helpful, and just generating data visuals at the same time. I think just having these instances of just like making it speedier, especially with like marketers that are like just trying to make decks really simpler, and get those insights right away so they can speak to them is something that was like very important. That talking to real users is like a big deal, right? I just want the top insights, top summaries. I want to do it quick. I don't want to think, don't have me think for you, right? Like let Canva help you do it in one step and communicate to me very easily. Because when you look at like other competitors again, like it's a pain in the butt when you look at presentations as a good example. Canva, you can do like a slide, a spreadsheet now, and then like another slide of like maybe your data visuals, and it's easy. You have to go tab to tab, like you were saying before, like on like maybe Google Slides or Google Sheets, and it's like, oh man, I don't want to do this. Like I want to just have it in one presentation, and you can do that easily now. Oh yeah. So just don't have the user think too much. It's like they can just easily do something where it's just like, okay, find the insights right away. Easy. One tap, go to Magic Insights. So just make it easy to look for it or even just make it easy to be found, right? Is just like probably a big thing because when you look at other competitors, right, you have to like sometimes search for it, look for it, and it can be a little bit annoying to use. It doesn't take maybe one or two taps and it doesn't really follow the value prop that they're selling to you in the beginning. So for us, I think that's like a value prop. Simple things made easier. Um, Also, just like the workflow. When you're thinking about someone else's workflow as a person, like again, you don't want them to think too hard of using your experience in general. So you want to just elevate certain experience to make it smoother and faster for them, right? It's all about speed for most people, especially marketers, project management, right? They don't want to think too hard in finding things. So how do you make that process smooth?
I love that. Um, do you feel that like working at a company that prioritizes design, and creativity, uh, do you think that makes a difference in terms of how AI features are shaped? And, maybe what are one or two things you could, give to other design leaders at their companies to maybe enhance their workflow or build more considerations uh, for tooling to unlock sort of like this potential.
100% it like impacts a lot of the decisions.
Yeah.
Working for a design leader that understands design, used to be a designer, it it impacts a lot of the decisions and the experience. And I think that's super helpful having that design perspective at the top. Just looking over things. I think that's super what's super positive in general for all of us because at least like, hey, she gets it. She understands like design. She understands the human experience of struggling to find things in general and not making users feel like, oh man, like I feel so dumb for not knowing the software. Like we're making it super simple for people to do things that, how she described it, give them superpowers, right? I think that's probably the most important. How do you give these users superpowers to feel like I can do this without having to think so much or feel like I'm so dumb? Like they're not dumb anymore, like using our products in general. So I think that's really important to like call out, having that perspective from the top and understand like this is how design is perceived and how it should be, and that's important to the core experience of just making it very simple. So I love having that leadership in general, steer us in that direction. And then what was the other part of the question that you were talking about? Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
trying to remember.
so it like kind of taking from that experience, sort of the output in terms of bringing sort of delight and value to users in a very simple and intuitive way. What's advice, that you might have for leaders at organizations to, maybe unlock that in their own product organizations?
I mean, the easiest answer is like listen to designers, right? But like I know I've read Reddit. I've seen people just struggle with like not having the right leadership in place, just standing up for design. I know it's very difficult in general. And I not to bash LinkedIn, but there's a lot of people that haven't built stuff that just talk a lot of smack on LinkedIn. And I'm just like, have you read Reddit, guys? Like there are people struggling, like having no voice at their organization. So just having the right leadership, having the right people in place, also like talking to your CTO, your chief CPO, or even just have developing relationships. Because at the end of the day, it's not technical, right? No pun intended, but like love the people, the relationships, how you build them with the CPO, CTO, and everyone that's like a high stakeholder at the end of the day. And how do you speak their language, right? And then it comes down to talking like technically speaking general, right? Because once you build those relationships, you understand how they work, but also most importantly, like now you can may have influence over potentially the design decisions. And I think that's the hardest part because people are struggling with that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What, like, if there's like one or two tactics though, right? Like, how do people start to engage in that way? Like, what were there, you've worked at many different companies. And so what was like the biggest difference when you interfaced with maybe product and eng partners here versus like in the past? You don't have to single out
Oh, it's the same to be honest. It's just like again, I mean, it's just different culture for sure. I mean, like when I worked in Asia, we've talked about this on the last pod, right? Like it's similar relationship type issues. Like you have to have allies, especially when you are trying to build a argument. You're building a case pretty much. You have to act like a lawyer. Build your case of like, hey, this is why we think this is right. You have allies behind you. You have actually edge cases behind you. And if they don't listen to you, that's not on you. That's probably just, up to like the decision head who's probably the CEO. So like how are you working with the CEO first off? Is there ways to incorporate the CEO's feedback? Can you get feedback right away from the CEO? Can you send like a deck, decision deck, maybe like quickly to like the person that makes decisions up, early, in charge? So like, hey, what do you think about this? This is what the team's thinking about. And then how do you incorporate potentially like the CEO's potential perspective as well? Because like obviously I think for me, right, what's been super helpful is just having these relationships with different types of people across different teams. I mean, that's why I thank so many people. Like if you don't have the oversight of like who's working on what and how they impact the product, then that's a problem. You need to talk to these people. You need to have these allies behind you to make a case of like why this is a good decision or why it isn't a good decision to push things forward. And I think that's why I'm thankful to have like a very good PM that also looks over that. I have another good designer that also oversees that and understands like the value of having these different types of opinions to make a case, to make a change in the experience for the betterment of the overall system.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, so, some shared responsibility, right? Goes a long way. After going through a launch like this, is there anything that excites you about design that maybe wasn't on your radar a year ago, 2 years ago?
Oh my God. I think the AI stuff has been fascinating. I've actually built my own app through AI. And it gave me like more ideas to just like do that. But it's been funny because like, when I read again, like when I read things online, there's some like weirdos out there, man. It's like, dude, if you're gonna build your own app, you do still need like an engineer and a designer. Like if especially when you get real users, oh my God, it's like crazy. Like, oh, you don't need designers, you don't need an engineer. Like the QA debt that you start building when you start building an app is crazy. And you're
And this,
like,
and this is
especially if
on
you
the
don't
this is on the
understand it.
back end, right? This is on the back
Yeah,
end.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I'm using APIs and I don't know that much coding. I've coded in Swift before, but oh my God, like the amount of errors that I got and I ran out of credits, dude. Like when I was building my app, I ran out of credits for 2 days in a row. I was like so pissed because there's so many errors in my
What
code.
are what are you building in?
So I was building like this article tracker where you can subscribe to like subjects around the world. So like let's say if you want to follow example, Zion Williamson got drafted, you want to see like the history of like his injury history of like what's caused it in general, and you get like updates into your timeline, very similar to Twitter, but like just focused on that one person or one subject. So my actual inspiration was like looking at murder mysteries and like from like 2010, like I want to see what happens to this murder mystery case over the course of time until 2025. How can I get live updates on that case and track this subject over the course of time and see like what's going on? Maybe I can solve it. So that type of stuff. But like I had so many weird, funky errors that I was like getting aggravated. So I literally had to build my own interaction and show it to my engineering friend. And he's like, yeah, I can do that. But you do realize like you have to like change your whole like coding and all these errors are because of X, Y, Z. And I was like, man, like I'm so pissed I didn't have like an engineer in the beginning. So it just taught me that like this is super fun. This is super cool. The barrier of entry to build apps is easier now, but you still need like to stand out. You still need to have like a team still, right? And for example, one example I want to give you is like remember Path, like the app Path. Remember that cool interaction where like all those ball like the circles popped out from that button, right? Like that's how you stand out, dude. Like those little interactions. It's like that's how you make experiences stand out from other people. So I guess that's my point, right? You can't just
Wait,
assume
I'm
that
trying to remember. Was Path sort of like the personal diary app?
social media. That's right. Yes. Yeah. 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 Like that's how you stand out from other experiences, right? At the end of the day, like people are not going to remember you just for the um easy app that you made. They're going to remember the either the painful experience that you gave them or the easy experience that you gave them, right? So, yeah.
I love this. This is actually really interesting. One of my other guests actually was we were actually talking about this idea of software as a gift, and so it's a lot smaller scale. And the approach there was actually a lot more like personalized and intimate experiences versus like with you, this is obviously maybe I would imagine like a larger scale. But one of the things we don't really hear about often, we're hearing all this vibe coding, very, very, very individual, but like you're almost kind of bringing about this concept of like co-creation with an engineer where, maybe you are working, maybe you are working a lot closer. Perhaps maybe it doesn't require a larger set of engineer. Maybe the timeline's a lot quicker,
Yeah.
but you're also anticipating longer term maybe growth around that, right? um I don't even want to say growth is like a loaded word nowadays, I'm sorry. Maybe just at a larger scale than one or two people. um I'm curious, like what was like your process of like actually getting to the point of understanding like, oh man, like maybe I did have a little bit too hubris thinking I could build my own app. Like maybe I should like bring someone else in.
Oh, dude, yeah. I got to the point where I was just like, I mean, I told you, right? Like those 2 days where I couldn't use AI anymore and I had hit the limit. That's when I hit my own personal limit. It's like, okay, I don't know why social media is making this seem like it's easy. It's because like if you really want your experience to like really be different, but also like stand out, then you're gonna have to like go in these directions where it's like, yeah, it's gonna be hard to do. It's gonna be hard to build. And that I assumed that AI could solve all my problems, like just based off like what I was reading. But then when I went through my own experience, I was like, get out of here. You guys are just like lying to me in a way. Like, yes, sure, like lovable or like I think Versal or V0, whatever. Like, yes, you can pinpoint like what you want changed in your buttons, and it's really nice. You can pinpoint like the layout and change things. That's wonderful. But when you try to stand out from like competitors, like that's where innovation comes into play. Another example, even though the CEO of Tesla is a crazy person, remember when Tesla first got introduced? Those large screens changed the driver experience in general. Now you're starting to see all these cars have these large screens in their car everywhere. So think about it, like you need to be that application that brings that very nice experience into that space and innovate, and you're going to stand out a lot. And AI can get you to that point, but it won't get you to that point where that's very different. Like we were talking about, like what I talked about into my internal team. AI is based off like existing designs, right? To stand out, you still need to have like these funky interactions that no one's thought about. So you still need to play with ProtoPie, Framer, whatever to get these amazing interactions that really stand out and make the user experience really nice. So I encourage any designer or any team to really think about that because, like, yes, you can assume that AI can help you right now, but if this really stand out from competitors to have a really nice experience, you'll still need designers to actually build that out for you and like flesh it out, especially with engineers. I think it's made me understand like what's possible with AI. Definitely for sure. Like I'll do no, well, not just me, but also my design partner in crime on Sheets. Like she'll do some really quick iterations, which is awesome on maybe like one of the AI prototype, like whether it's Claude or CodePen or whatnot, and it's really easy to showcase. But if it's like super in-depth interaction, then like for me, maybe it's like higher fidelity that I have to showcase in a larger, higher stakes argument or decision making. Then I'll have to pull out like ProtoPie in general to like flesh out like, hey, this is what it's going to look like, and hey, here you can play with it in general, and this is what potentially it could feel like. So I think that's how it's changed my perspective in general of like what AI can do and what I'll use it for versus I'll just like noodle around with something else to make it even more interesting, especially with the interactions, so people can actually get a sense and feel of like how it looks and you know what it could potentially do, and engineers can understand like, okay, this is not easy, this is easy, and you can get that decision making easily when you have like those prototypes in general, whether it's easy like a whether it's like built through Claude or VO or whether it's like ProtoPie. I think they're very important. It's for me nowadays.
Is there a point of like diminishing returns when you're trying to build something with a like with AI? Because I can remember when I was working at a startup, like I could code. This is pre any of the tooling we have today, right? You're essentially launching and coding like JavaScript interactions, right? And I remember like I got to a point where I was like, I am literally doing more bug bashing for something
Yeah.
I that isn't really going to get us forward than actually like thinking about the design problem.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, is there any point of that where you're like, you know what, maybe this isn't the best approach. Maybe going back to Figma or maybe some other tool is better to sort of communicate this across than just like doing AI for the sake of AI and saying, hey, look, we can really do this.
Yeah, for me personally, like I would rather like go in Figma and actually build things out and try to see how things react. I think for like AI, it'll only come up in special cases in general. Like I try not to overuse it because if you're trying to like really make, uh, maybe not make, but look into very difficult interactions, then you're gonna have to consider like maybe I'll go into Figma and then maybe play around within ProtoPie if it's a difficult interaction. If it's like something super simple and people just want to see it like right away, especially like if it's simple interactions, then like yeah, sure, go to Claude or Versal or whatever, and pull out, and share it with people. I think like what you said, like it only comes into certain cases where it's important to showcase. I wouldn't use it all the time. In a large company, I wouldn't use it all the time. But if you really want to like noodle around and actually get something that's like very interesting to use and looks like your product, then yeah, go into ProtoPie, Figma in general. But I think it for right now, AI is really good at getting that initial first idea of what it may look like at first. But yeah, diminishing returns. I think maybe after that first instance, then you have to like start building like the things what it's actually going to look like, what it's actually going to feel like too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, look, if you had any advice that you want to share with our listeners, what would it be?
Just don't listen to social influence. No, I'm joking. Which, uh, just do it yourself. To be honest, like take initiative to build your own stuff and push the boundaries. Like I get that there are people doing it right now, and maybe they're doing it quicker, but to be honest, you're gonna understand like how AI works and how you should potentially use it to work with other people. Because like, yeah, sure, I can like make a video about like engineer. I don't need engineers really easily, and I can believe it because I fell into that hype as well, right? I was like, oh, I can do this without engineers, sure. And but then once you go into that whole like world of like vibe coding, and then you actually get into those weird cases like where you're trying to build out something that's like a special experience or delightful experience, and then you find out that you can't do it, that's like disheartening in a way. Like I'm sure there are ways to do it now, right? And I'm sure the technology will get better. Things are speeding up, but I think we've hit the peak, to be honest. Or we're hitting the peak where it's like, okay, we know this is like where it's at, but to really stand out from other products, to ever stand out from other designers, that's where the craftsmanship and taste comes into play at the end of the day. And having those skills still, matter a lot if you really want to stand out as a designer or even as a product as well.
Yeah. Well, Jay, thanks so much for coming on the show. This is a really great conversation and insight to what you've been focused on. Really happy for you and the Canva team on the launch. And as always, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. I love keeping up with you. I was actually thinking the last time you were on the show, you may have actually been still in Singapore. So, it speaks true to you, the Globetrotter. Um, where can people connect with you? Where can people learn more about the work that you're doing? Do you have any, special projects coming up that you want to give a plug to?
Yeah, come through on LinkedIn in general. Just feel free to connect. Um, maybe threads as well. I barely use my threads, but also, repost stuff on threads in general. No special projects, but I am looking into a podcast as well soon. But we'll see. We'll see. But I got some things going on, but for now they're not as half baked as I want them to be. But yeah, maybe you can follow and find out on LinkedIn.
Sure. All right, Jay, thank you so much. And everyone tuning in, thanks for listening. See you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Technically Speaking. If you like today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe on Substack, YouTube, and you can give me a follow on LinkedIn. Links are in the show notes. See you next time.